And we're going to talk about estradiol in men because there seems to be a little bit of controversy regarding estradiol in men. So let's get to it. I think we should start with this title here called The Truth About Hormones. Hormone replacement therapy is riskier than they advertise. What is a woman to do? Oh my gosh. What's a woman to do? This was the Time magazine cover, July 22nd, 2002, after the Women's Health Initiative was published. Now, the Women's Health Initiative was a very controversial women's health study, which at the time was poised to be a 14-year-long study from 1991 to 2005. And the study was to determine a few things. The first thing is they wanted to discover whether or not, I think this is the primary endpoint, was whether or not estrogen therapy or hormone therapy caused cardiac disease and death. And the secondary endpoint was to see if estradiol therapy, estrogen therapy, was indicated or implicated in invasive breast cancer. And so that's what that was about. And as a matter of fact, the study was cut short. Instead of ending in 2005, it ended in 2002 because there was an overwhelming number of women who were actually experiencing invasive breast cancer as a result of hormone therapy. And so let's dig into that for a second, because the study was flawed. The study design was flawed. The information that they put out there as a result of the study was flawed. And it was just, the media loves salacious headlines. And so they took all hormones and they grouped them together and said, get off the hormones, And so, unfortunately, that's what happened. But let's talk about the study design. All right. So there was a lot of women in this study, lots and lots and lots of women. There was two cohorts. There was a cohort of women who had hysterectomies. Okay. So they did not have a uterus. And they were placed on Premarin. Premarin was an estrogen medication back during this time. And it's an equine estrogen, a synthetic estrogen. And then there were women who had not had a hysterectomy, and they were placed on something called Prem-Pro. And Prem-Pro was a medication that consisted of both the estrogen, the equine estrogen, and progestin, a synthetic progestin. So the crazy thing about this is they kept calling it erroneously. They called it progesterone, and which is very far from the truth. Progestin and progesterone are not the same. And so progesterone, like micronized progesterone, which I prescribe for women, is a bioidentical progesterone, as closely related or resembles the progesterone produced in the body by the body. And then estradiol. Estradiol, 17-beta estradiol, is the most abundant and most estrogen in your body. And whenever I put somebody on estradiol, that's what I use. I use a bioidentical estradiol. And so, unfortunately, the results of the study were published. The women who are in the Prem-Pro group had a higher risk of cardiac disease. They had a higher risk of strokes. They had a higher risk of osteoporosis. They had a higher risk of Alzheimer's disease. And they were experiencing invasive breast cancer. And so, the results were published, and it was just dispersed. The information was dispersed, and all hormones were grouped together. And women were advised, flush all your hormones down the toilet, don't use them anymore. And then providers or prescribers were advised to not prescribe anymore. And if you were on them, and if you were going to continue on your hormones, you better stop it at 60, right? Age 60. And so all this information out there was just taken and ran with and completely misinterpreted. They could have revisited the design. They could have said, well, why don't we use progesterone, natural progesterone, or micronized progesterone? And why don't we use a bioidentical estradiol as well? They didn't do that.